Hello, welcome to TSC Talks, the podcast inspired by the condition known as tuberous sclerosis complex, which causes benign tumors to grow in all the major organs of the body. This podcast is for those directly affected, parents, caregivers, anyone who's ever struggled to make sense of unimaginable circumstances and find a way. My name is Jill Woodworth, and I am your host. Buckle up. We're going for a ride outside the box, off the grid, down many a rabbit hole, and back as we wrangle a way to case manage and stay sane. Talk about it, compare notes, find the experts, pick their brains. No magic bullet, but we are not alone. Hi, my guest today is Tiffani Goff. Tiffani is a TSC mom. I met her online in the TSC community, kind of casually over the years, following each other, other stories, and recently connected with her when I heard that she wrote a book called Loving Tiara, Memoir, which is about her daughter Tiara that had TSC and passed away in 2015. And I'd seen this happening and playing out on Facebook, kind of watching Tiffani to see how she went through this and how she posted after this happened. Because as a parent of children with TSC, I think one of our biggest fears is that this might happen, that we might lose a child. And it's a very present reality for many people. The prognosis is good, with my own loved ones affected by TSC, but there's just such a range of impact. And Tiffani just illustrates beautifully how things can go wrong, even when, you're talking to really top doctors and treatments play out differently than you anticipate or than doctors understand. And there's all kinds of things that happen in TSC case management, and Tiffani seems to have experienced many of them in this book. So it's interesting for that reason alone. I ended up starting to do the podcast with her without reading the book, and incredibly embarrassed. Thought I, hadn't really been giving it much thought. Did my usual research, the guests, to try to find out about them online, Facebook, whatnot. It just slipped my mind. Oh yeah, she wrote a book. I'm interviewing her about the book, and I haven't freaking read it until we're sitting in the interview. And if she could have seen me, in reality, I was like 25 shades of red. And we rescheduled the interview. She was just gracious enough to do that. And I dug into the book, read it for, page turner, unbelievable page turner. And I knew that it was going to pull me and I was going to feel it. And it definitely did. I sat in the bathroom in the middle of the night and cried my eyes out. But it also inspired me, motivated me, and just, I just want to give her a high five and a big hug because she puts it out there and she does not hold back. And I know, of course, she did hold back because who puts everything out there? And we talk a little bit about that in this interview. So you're getting the inside scoop on A Loving Tiara, a memoir. Anyways, Tiffani is a writer, a blogger. I will share all her sites. She's been active in the TSC community. She has a law degree. She's started a whole business, staging, and just tons of stuff this woman's done. She's a ball of energy, lots of fun, and it hits you right to the core. Very deep, connected human being. So can't say enough about being grateful our paths crossed, and just powerful, moving, and illustrates a lot of the challenges that we have as TSC parents and individuals affected in traditional medicine and just in the systems of care that we depend on, and how challenging it can be. And it's heartbreaking, but it's, as I said, it's also very inspiring and motivating. So I hope you go buy it, read it, and enjoy, and are motivated to read it by this podcast. I'm going to stop talking. Take it away, Tiffani. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sure. Yeah, so you wrote this book. I'm just going to give a little preview. So Tiffani Goff, welcome to TSC Talks. When did you decide to write the book? At what point? Had it been something you always wanted to do, or
It's funny because when I married my husband, our life was so crazy when we first got married. And I didn't even include everything. I was like, oh, I'm writing a book someday. And he was like,
I hear you.
and I've never been like a writer. I just thought, oh, I've got to write this. And then he was like, no, you can't write it. And then Tiara is born and all of this happens. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and then I never really thought about truly writing a book until I became a blogger. And it just like saved me, blogging about it and not feeling alone. And I learned that I liked writing. I didn't know that I liked writing. In high school, I was in honors English and I always got an F on all my grammar. And like I'm terrible. And I get a B- on my content. And I got kicked out of honors English as a senior. The teacher was so rude to me. I said, I'll never forget it. We were having this roundtable discussion. I gave my opinion and he was like, Miss Whitaker, it'd probably be best if you just marry a doctor. I was like, what? So I changed classes. I was like, oh my gosh. So I never knew I could write. And then after I started the blog and people were like, you're a good writer. I'm like, so I never knew. I feel like my writing though is like, I'm just talking. I can talk forever. So that's kind of what I just talking.
But you went to law school. So just to set the stage, so you got married, you had more of like a traditional kind of upbringing, fairly affluent in California. And, you married this wonderful guy and, were on a path and yeah. And so then, your daughter says, Mom, you want to have another baby? And you got pregnant with Tiara.
That's pretty much how I make all my decisions. Sure. Awesome. Then I'm pregnant. Yeah. So I basically had what people would have thought was like a perfect kind of growing up life. I imagined I was just going to have money and have this kids. They were going to be smart and healthy. And it was nothing like that at all. I was broke, struggling.
Right. So when you had Tiara, you'd already had a little bit of taste of hardship.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was more hardship than I put in the book. I just got through it.
Oh, I hear you.
People could see, I had already been through hardship. Yes. So I guess God was preparing me for what was coming next is what I imagined. And I'd already figured out at a young age that the way I was being raised, it wasn't really who I think I was meant to be. At a young age, I've always been kind of deep. And that people in my family aren't like that. So I was just a little different. So I think having Tiara just allowed me to be who I was meant to be and just kind of allowed me to get rid of all that superficial stuff that isn't important. Because when you're taking care of a sick kid, you can't worry about that other crap. So it was like a gift in a way to have her and just to be like focused on what's real. So,
I agree.
Yeah, it's hard to do that unless you've suffered or we forget, unless you're taking care of people who really need you or you're dealing with a medical issue or you're struggling to live, you just don't get it.
I know. You can't explain it to somebody until you've lived it on some level. I think some people just have natural like empathy and compassion, but I know personally, I couldn't understand it until I went through that, breakdown type process of, yeah. So you have Tiara and she ends up being diagnosed with tuberous sclerosis complex. She was, and you struggled to get that diagnosis or to get the diagnosis.
It took about a month, probably closer to 6 weeks. And then she was 7 months old when we got the diagnosis, but it took a while because, they didn't know it was 21 years ago. So it was harder to get diagnosed. Now we know, it's infantile spasm month, last month, this month. So we've seen infantile spasms. You can Google it. And back then nurses hadn't even witnessed what they were.
Right. Yeah. Now you see people putting up their videos of, is this an infantile spasm? I'm like, that's just so amazing.
Yeah, we're like, yes, that's it. Get to the doctors.
We've already diagnosed your kid, just follow up and do, go talk to them. Yeah, those forums have been a lifesaver for me. And I said it in an interview with someone else that I wish that I had stayed tapped in during periods when I was really, I don't know, it's hard to second guess yourselves, but I see that as so important, even though it's hard to be on there all the time and read everybody's pain and trauma. But, I guess I feel like if I can touch down and see what, if there's anything that I can speak to and then kind of go off, but having that connection. So, you get the diagnosis of TSC and everything starts to change. And okay.
And I get, so after we get the diagnosis and we get the infantile spasms under control, and she starts having all the other seizures, but I immediately connected with the TS Alliance. Mm-hmm. And so that was super helpful. And then we started the Orange County group meeting. And that was kind of like your online forum. We weren't like, woe is me crying. We would go and meet and we would like, okay, what are you doing at the doctor? It was like, it was more of helping each other navigate this little group.
Right. And I think that's a really important piece of it, because there's just no one else that understands it at that level than other parents. Even if it's, your kids are all over the map in terms of how they're affected, just finding that network. I remember when I found a few TSC moms when my kids were younger being like, yeah. So looking at the highlights of your story, you dealt with like a lot of med changes. So with tuberous sclerosis complex, benign tumors grow in different organs of the body. Really, I've probably all of them. They just haven't found how they affect yet, I would say. But, a lot of TSC is trial and error. So like you were going through this process of figuring out how to stop the seizures. And it seemed to me like once you get something tied down, there'd be another issue. And that kind of kept happening. And Tiara seemed to present with like complications to the complications from whatever
was normal was not, she was the opposite. So whatever drug normally worked didn't work for her. So it was a lot of trial and error. And I think for even families who have a child not as effective as Tiara, that's the most important piece as a parent and a caretaker, is being able to identify, is this a behavior from a medication? What's a side effect? What is the actual condition? How is my child feeling when they can't communicate? Like that's the hardest part. And guessing, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? But I kind of feel like the best advice, if I'm giving advice, was you kind of just got to go with your gut. And you just have to like really pay attention.
Yeah, I think you become attuned to reading every signal, and, from facial expressions to just gait to, tiny, and that becomes like almost its own language, I felt like. So I know that you had really impressive intuition, I would say, and really had to hold your own. I think one of the things I wanted to have you talk about was just your persistence with the doctors and what gave you that intuition. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not but I will say that I've always been intuitive. Growing up, I don't really talk about it, but there was a lot of alcoholism and things going on in my home. So as a child, I was always learning to read the signs. I learned at a young age how to watch people. I tend to do that now. I don't know if I'm a little psychic, but I know things about people. When I'm talking to them, I feel their feelings. I sense, people just all of a sudden I'll be decorating their house and they're telling me their deepest, darkest secrets. So I've just kind of always been very in tuned. And when I was dealing with Tiara, after the first couple meds didn't work and I knew they weren't working, I was like, and I realized that some of the doctors, like when Dr. Stein in the beginning, he was her first doctor and then he just picked up and left. I was like, I realized like I'm responsible for her. So a doctor can just leave us. And he was like our lifeline. And so I that first made me realize I have to be in charge here. Like, I can't just depend. And then when you can't get visits. And so I just put aside my fear. I think that in life, one of the biggest things for anyone, whether not getting a new job or being afraid to speak up, is like fear. And I just was like, I am not going to be, I was scared, but I was like, forget it. I'm not being scared. Like, if I think I'm right, I'm going to be right. And I do think going to law school gave me that confidence.
Okay.
So I feel like that was a gift, even though I never used it. When I would start speaking to the doctors, I felt like not that but they knew I wasn't some dummy. And it was hard though, because sometimes just the way I looked, a blonde Newport girl, they're like, didn't take me seriously. And often, they would start talking to my husband and he would be like, don't talk to me. I don't know anything. But it's just, I think you have to just not be afraid. Because these doctors, it was funny, I listened to your last podcast about the marijuana.
Yeah.
With a lady that, I think her name was Tiffani.
Oh, Tiffani Watkins. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I listened to that and it was interesting because I really wanted Tiara to try CBD at the end of her life. But the problem is the study was coming out, but she was on so much medication. I knew that I couldn't, I was like, okay, Tiffani, can you give this to her without going through one of her physicians? I had to make that decision because she was in the hospital so often. I knew that I would have to be sneaking it to her.
Right.
And I was prepared to do that, but I wasn't prepared to put her life at risk. So I had to weigh that. Okay, can I do this? And I'm in the hospital and I'm sneaking it. I will not be giving them all the information. Is this going to benefit her that much? So in that decision, I went with the doctors. And Dr. Wu said, we are having a clinical trial soon. She can be in it, but you can't take the risk. And I was like, yeah, I can't. So I tried to always just think, okay, is this doctor really have her best interest at heart? Is this, because you see with all the different organs, everyone just cares about their organ. and we are the only ones who can say, okay, yeah, you want my kid to go on this drug that's going to reduce facial tumors and shrink them in her kidneys, but her immune system's going to be suppressed. Is she going to die of the flu this year? I have to weigh that, I have to. Yeah. So I just think that as a parent, you just have to not be afraid, look at everything and not be swayed. And you decide based on who's your best person, and then if you need to take a day to decide, then you have to take a day. Take the prescription and don't fill it, or just.
Right. No, that's really excellent advice, just because I think you were on to something really early that took me a long time to understand, is that the doctors are not always, I just put a lot of faith in the doctors and having good doctors, and I'm not discrediting any doctors, but I think that there's almost this, we've made them very, very high up in our society in terms of and that's hard for a condition like this, because you do need to consider a lot of variables that aren't usually typical.
Know. And they won't tell you, we don't know.
That's really frustrating. Yes.
Jill, I don't know. So when I finally learned, when she was only 2, he's like, this has never happened. And I'm like, you guys don't know. So it's very scary. But once I realized they're practicing, and our TS kids are total practice, because they're all different. They're all unique. Not the same thing works for all of them. So that's kind of what, as parents, we have to understand. Each child is very different. And so what works for your kid may not work. And yes, it's scary. And yes, it's hard. But we are running their medical, and we have got to look at everything, whether it's the diet. Diet is so important for some of these kids. I never felt like that was what was going to work for Tiara, plus her love of and the comfort it gave her Like, I couldn't take that away. But we have to balance. Like, you know, they wanted Tiara to do 5 days of therapy as a child. And I'm like, she can barely stay awake. Like, is that really going to work for her? Like, what's best for my kid? I think 3 days is good for her. So then you're like, okay, how much is she going to lose? Or is she going to be at home with her mommy getting hugs and feeling love and support? I think that's more important than in a room with someone drilling her with flashcards.
Yeah. I think we have to weigh those other considerations, and sometimes what might not look like the ideal choice really is because we have more information that we have at our fingertips that other people can't see. And I think that's another piece that's hard that you seem to navigate really well is outside judgment and really, you know, keeping your eyes on the prize and not letting that affect you as a human being or your interactions with people, trying to play, you know, I mean, but also you really did express well when you were off and you kept saying how, you know, that you swear a lot, and that's probably my go-to.
Oh, I held back in the book, but I mean, I put that on the book, but I did it. But I mean, if you really saw, I mean, I would get to be a crazy person. I don't know how I lived my life, but I mean, at home, like I'm screaming and yelling and swearing, and you know, it's hard. But then I have to acknowledge, like a lot of times to Trinity, because she always would take the brunt. I would be like, I'm sorry, I am acting horrible. Like, and I think that's it. Like, we got to give ourselves a pass. Like,
yeah, we do.
I'm crazy and I'm trying to manage this, but I'm not always good at it. So I'm sorry. And
yeah, and I felt exactly that. And I've thought like, oh, I'm just damaging my kids. I'm just like traumatizing them. And then my daughter, who's my youngest without TSC, she wrote me this beautiful letter and told me how much it meant to her that I basically was a human being and I had a bad day. And sometimes I just had a really bad day, you know, it wasn't the end of the world. You know, I think I lived with it, and I think it was our generation, our parents, this perfectionist ideal. I could relate to a lot of your family dynamics and that appearances, and that's not really something that you can hold on to that much with TSC.
It's all gone. There's no no, exactly. That's why I literally would pretend there was like a bubble around me, Jill.
Okay.
I mean, out in public, and people were always staring. Tiara shoving food in her mouth, burping out loud. And, you know, I'm taking my kids to Ruby's where everyone goes. And I am just, they're kind of horrified, but I'm like, if you want to go to Ruby's like everybody else, then this is what it looks like. And I just block them out because what else can I do? Then otherwise that means my other kids never get to go to eat. So it's embarrassing. But my kids now, like your younger daughter, they're amazing human beings because they see real life. And, you know, they're just on a different path.
Yeah, and you know, you found a way to nurture them while you were going through all of this. And I'm sure you're going to tell me it wasn't perfect, but how could it have been? But I mean, you're going through major ups and downs all the time with Tiara, trying to figure out like the vomiting seizures and that whole episode, just event after event. And then, you know, you'd switch back to talking about Tabitha's volleyball or her athleticism or where she was going to school or, you know, and then Trinity. And I mean, you kept checked in with them the whole time and really had a lot of concern for how they were being impacted. And yeah, how did you know, you can talk about that a little bit, how you managed to.
I'm an overachiever. As much as I try to not be a perfectionist, I'm a perfectionist. I'm a Virgo. I can't help it. So I think I knew Tiara was not going to live forever. So it was kind of like, I know she's taking up so much time, but these kids are here for a reason. I've got 2 other kids, and I can't drop the ball. And I knew it wasn't going to be forever, you know? So it was kind of like God was just like keeping me going because they were going to be here. I knew they were going to be here a lot longer and I just couldn't abandon them. And my husband is the sweetest guy in the whole world, but he's never filled out a piece of paperwork for school. He doesn't know, he doesn't know he didn't know any of that. You know, he didn't even know how to find the volleyball schedule online. So if I wasn't going to do it, nobody was going to do it. And then when Tiara wasn't here, then what, you know, I just felt like I didn't have a choice. And I was just always trying to overcompensate. That's like, you know, I would not sleep. I mean, I remember, and I didn't put it in the book, but Tabitha I never missed anything for Tabitha. She was the oldest. She needed me at everything. And once Tiara had an episode, went to the hospital with a croup cough, and I was at the hospital with her all night, and Tabitha had a performance at her elementary school. And so Lou showed up to the hospital in the morning. I went in my same clothes, got some gum from someone, and to go to her performance. And she showed up in my house because she would not be okay if I missed it. And then I just went back to the hospital, whereas Trinity was like, please don't show up because you're going to bring Tiara. It's so embarrassing. You know, so I just had to just make something and send it, Mom. Just stay. So thank God.
Funny though.
And they're just such different kids. But
yeah.
I just knew that I had to do that for Tabitha, but I could let something else, you know, there was other things I could let go. So it just,
keeping that long perspective too, like you really were honest to say, okay, well, Tiara's not going to be here for as long. And sometimes making the choice, you know, to stay with her when, you know, other people were saying you might be needed with your other children, and really just sticking to your inner conviction that was the choice that you were making and the right choice in the moment. So I thought that was interesting, really interesting. And yeah.
I mean, we do know now that these kids are passing away from TSC. I had never known of a child passing away from TSC until 6 months before Tiara passed away.
Really?
No, well, it's funny. We hear in the news people dying of seizures, but you know, they have one seizure, they die. Our kids are having hundreds a day and they're still plugging along. But I knew, like, no human can endure this kind of seizures and medicine. And one of the family that I followed on the forum, their son passed away in September. Tiara passed away in January. And when I saw that, I don't know if you follow Nick, when I saw that Nicholas had passed away, I was like, oh, I knew Tiara was next. Like, I was like, she passed away 5 months later. Like, I just knew, and I'd never seen it, but now we're seeing it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, have you seen it? Now we see it, but before, I mean, years ago, I didn't see a lot of kids. But, I mean,
no, not too much. Not too much. I guess I was going to say that I think that things like got so much that I didn't want to hear anything about anybody. I just needed to be like right there, and I felt like my situation was so extreme and off the charts for so many reasons that I didn't even feel like I fit in with the TSC community. So for a long time, and that's when I kind of checked out, I feel like, and I don't want to say I regret it, but I think that if you are listening and you know, let yourself go off the boards and then come back on, you know, don't check out completely. We like to know, I mean, people care, and So I guess I didn't see any deaths either. And I really was in denial about a lot of the long-term impact and implications of having children, even with, you know, mild, moderate effect because of the way things are in our society and how like little things can take, you know, you kind of start like this and then it kind of goes, woo, you know, like that, the path. So.
Well, you know, it's interesting. If you have a child with moderate TS, sometimes it's almost harder because these kids are almost typical. And as they get older, the differences, like emotionally,
that's where
that is a huge struggle. Like I see a family that Tiara grew up with, and the girls are 21, and I worry about, you know, suicide and stuff because these kids are really depressed and really dealing with some serious emotional stuff that other people don't always understand. And then they've got some bumps on their face, and then they get rid of them, then they come back. It's like that stuff is just as hard and in a different way. You know, it's really hard.
it's just, yeah, it's different. It's a different level, but it's that being different, and that, you can't see the internal struggle and present as very typical in some ways. So the expectations, are there, that, and even family, they don't understand that this doesn't really, it's not like you get to a point where it's going to be okay. I mean, I think you can kind of get some predictability, and for some people, yes, that plays out that way. But I found, like, it's just to be one new turn in the path after another. But it's hard for family and close friends to keep up with that, because you're always going through these, like, something simple like not being able to drive is a delay, where because of seizures, you're isolated more, and
or even dating, just everything. Dating, wanting to have a family, and how do you navigate that? That's big, scary stuff. I mean, those are other people don't have to think about that our kids, your children, it's devastating. It's hard.
It is. I feel like, you have to live with this, and I was going to bring this up. You have to live with a certain amount of heartbreak on a daily basis, I think, where you're looking at and not trying to be in their heads too much, but you kind of have to be to a degree, but also, looking at the differences and the things that, how they're being marginalized, and how these little things, and it's really, I guess it's helpful to not live there, but to feel that, I think, for me, and stay engaged. As a parent, I don't know, I guess one thing I was going to say to you is that you did not fall into like an addiction, or, that you shared, but, you see, I went to that, I just took that was a coping mechanism that escalated into a real problem, because I was like, I almost like got to that point where I call it the ethics, and you start to really not care. Things are just so much that any choice seems no better or worse than the next one, because everything's going to crap. But I think that you pulled through a lot of trauma without dipping down into really self-destructive behaviors. So, and how did you do that?
Well, my husband drinks too much. We come from family of alcoholics. My parents are alcoholics, so we are alcoholics. But I hate that label, though. I'm a functioning alcoholic. I drink wine every day, but I always had a limit, because I had to drink 2 glasses or less, or I can't take care of Tiara. But I had to have those 2 glasses, but he drank too much. So I had, when we got married, it was kind of like first couple months of marriage, we both were like out partying, and he was like, one of us is going to kind of have to be the one that doesn't drink as much, because this isn't totally going to work. And I'm like, I realized, I guess that's going to be me. So kind of just like right from the beginning, I'm the one that's going to have to be, we're going to a party and he says he'll drive, and I can't trust him. So I just knew that. And the girls, he'd be like so sweet and always hanging with them, but they're like, if we need something and it's nighttime, and mom's the person. Mm-hmm. So you just didn't have a choice. Yeah. I don't have a choice, Jill. If he was sober, then maybe I could have been the drunk. It would have really, it would have been nice sometimes, like in the holidays, and, my family's going through a case of wine, and I have to be like the responsible one and leave early and bring the meds. But
I think it's a double whammy when you do, because then not only are you have kids that are struggling, but you're a bad parent, you're a bad mother, because you fell apart and you lost it. So, I think that's maybe a small blessing that you had to be responsible. And
and everybody drinks too much in my family. So it's kind of yuck, in a way. Like my kids, like Trinity and Tabitha, was like knew, oh, mom's, we can go home now, because everybody else like stay late drinking. And I'm like, come on, I'll take you too. Let's go take Tiara. But now I can do what I want, but I still don't overdrink.
It's funny because, I feel like it's lost the meaning. It doesn't hold the interest, I've had a drink here and there, and it's like, I have no interest in going back, because it reminds me of a lot of stuff. Yeah, so it's good that's good to be the responsible one. You mentioned, your faith and you're Catholic, and has that been helpful for you in coping and putting everything into perspective?
Yes. So I was raised Catholic, but we never really went to church that much. So when my oldest was born, Tabitha, I was like, I'm going to church and I'm going to bring my kids. So I kind of as an adult became very Catholic, and then I would go with my grandparents. So every Saturday I would pick them up and drive them to church. So to me, it was kind of like a family thing. I always wanted to, it used to bum me out when I would go to church as a child and we'd only come for the holidays, and all these people at the church were like, they seemed like they belonged. Like that was like their place. And I was like, I want that. Like, I want to have a place that I belong. So I kind of, as an adult, always tried to foster that for my kids and for myself. And then after Tiara passed, I went to mass every day. I mean, that's there's so many downsides to being a Catholic, but one of the great things about being a Catholic is that you can go to any church in the world and everyone's saying the same prayer on the same day and standing up and kneeling. And it's just like it's like a meditation for me.
Yeah.
And I don't limit myself to the Catholic beliefs. It's like, that's my home. I love those people. I go there. There's so many faults and so much wrong, but it kind of just like keeps me centered, because I do believe in mediums and psychics. And I believe if you're Buddhist, your God's still going to be the same as my God. I kind of just like being a good person and living with integrity and doing the right thing is my God. And so it just happens to be, I find that at my church, but I don't.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
No. So yeah, so I love to go there, but I love to learn about other people and their religion. Sometimes on Saturday when my husband's working, I'll go to the local Christian church extra because it's like a rock band. Like, I want to go over there because it's a free concert. My husband's working, so I go to mass.
Yeah, I think that's great perspective, and I found, I've like kind of had a really interesting journey with faith, being in a very conservative Christian upbringing. And yeah, I just didn't quite make sense to me completely.
Well,
the black and white. Yes.
Judgment. I don't believe in judgment. So a lot of these people that claim that they're so Christian, they're judging you because you drink. They're judging you. And I'm like, God doesn't judge. Like, that's not, so that's kind of where I just like, I believe in gay marriage. I love gay people. My church doesn't believe in that, but it's funny. They don't believe in living together. But in my soul group at church, like half of our kids live with their boyfriends. So, it's just like, it's more of just love. God is love. And that's, God is love. God is kindness. And when you find a truly spiritual Catholic person, we have a sister that comes and speaks. She blows your mind because she's truly, so you just kind of have to put aside all those other people and just find your home, which church is your home where you most fit in, and then do your own thing. That's kind of what I think.
Wherever you feel connected, I guess that's kind of how it's been for me. I haven't, going to church became like a 3-ring circus with my kids, like running out of the rooms where and yes, and I just dropped it, and I don't miss it. And that's
okay. I mean, we all have
I feel okay about it. I think my family's still going to pray for me that I come back to the fold before I die, so I can make it into the heaven or whatever that is, that astral plane. I don't know, but yes. But I do think that having, a higher power or something beyond myself, like that I can connect with, that concept has been really important to me.
It's very important, because if there isn't something outside of us, like, why are we enduring this? I
something
feel
good pulling us forward, kind of.
Yes, pulling us forward and learning our lessons. And I don't know if I put it in the book or not, but I don't think I did. But the first time I saw the median and Tiara was there, I mean, she was.
Tell me.
Okay, so I went to the first median, and this lady, there's a group that was designed. I'll have to email it to you after I'm they screen mediums. So if you've lost a child, you can go to their website, and these have independently screened. So these are the real deal, because they want you to be able to feel connected, not gotten taken by some charlatans. So this lady that I met was on this list.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to her place in LA, and she opened the door, and I'm wearing a big cross with turquoise, Tiara's favorite color. And she says, oh my gosh, she says, she's got on her turquoise ring, her turquoise earring. She goes, I kept trying to put on pearls, and every time I grabbed the pearl, my hand kept going to the turquoise. She goes, and now I see why. She goes, you're wearing turquoise. I said, well, that was Tiara's favorite color. She goes, sometimes spirit shows up before. She goes, obviously, she's waiting for you. I mean, so Tiara was there, and there were so many things, but the one thing that really struck me is she said, you know, you and Tiara have had lots of lives together, and you guys signed up for this. She said, you both decided that this next path together, you wanted to, she said, be like elevated souls. So you chose to endure this suffering. You knew that was going to happen because with it, it was going to bring like, I don't know, enlightenment or growth.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And like that kind of really fit in with, I knew she was going to be here forever. Like I killed myself keeping her alive because like there was a point to this. And the point is, I guess, who I am now, and the fact that I could die and be like, okay, good. I'm proud. I'm done. Like I've done enough.
I hear ya. I do. I feel like, you know, I've done my work. It's just this living thing, you know, we just got to keep going. Yeah. You know, I love that. I had been very brought up to think that mediums and that whole area was like evil or bad. And a TSC mom bought me a reading like a year and a half ago, and I believed that it wasn't like I held on to that belief that it was bad up till then. I'd long since, you know, adopted much more broad opinions, but I never had a reading, and it would really help because it was one where I was asking questions specifically, and maybe it was channeling. And it was really helped me answer some, and I've always been one of those, like I feel like I don't think like everybody else and have the, kind of deep. Yeah. Kind of deep. Like, you know, I'm thinking about these really complex things and so anyway, so I had the reading, but it helped me answer some questions and gain a lot of insight. And I think that, you know, we're here to work on some stuff, and it's a stop on our soul's journey to the next whatever. And that's helped me gain a lot of peace, I think, with, you know, I chose this situation with my kids and the drama that happened with my ex and all this stuff, all the really heavy stuff and trauma, and kind of brings it, like, if you can understand that it's part of a process and it was meant to be. And, you know, even though that might sound like really
but you were meant to learn this lesson and go like, I don't believe every little thing we do, people say, oh, well, that was meant. But TSC parent, we were chosen to do some hard lessons. And if we're going to survive and do our best, then I feel like we're really learning, or we're going to give up. Like, you know, some of the dads that run away, and or how, you know, it's like it's hard. We're on this mission. We're on a path, and it's a hard one, really hard.
Right. I felt that with your book, you know, like here comes Tiara. And it's just, to me, it's obvious she's like that one part where I think it was Poppy said something about her being an angel. Like seeing that, you know, like this is an extraordinary human being, and you're going to have an extraordinary experience that's really going to force you out of your change your life.
Force you out of your comfort zone. That's what you're saying.
So the process when you knew she was going to die, I mean, how did you cope with that with your other family members? Can you just talk a little bit about going through that, if you can?
Yeah. It was interesting because at the book I said, you know, I knew the last 6 months I kept thinking she was going to die. Like nobody would say it to me, but I just was like,
you know, Tiffani, just let me, I mean, that's one thing that you just were like Give me a straight answer here with a lot of the situations you were in. And that's where I am now. Like, I'm tired of the BS with I mean, I want to know because, yeah. So you felt like
this looked like someone who's going to die. And, it wasn't until the very last hospital admission, which was only 2 weeks before she passed, where the doctor finally said, yeah, you're right. But it's like, I had to hound them. And it was interesting because I did not put this in the book, but so when we went home from that visit on hospice, when the hospice physician came over and I was describing, Tiara and her life, and she was only able to crawl, and he was very quiet. I went on, and he was so quiet. And I said, do you think that she's going to pass away? Like, what do you think? And he said, I've kind of never seen something like this. And I'm having a hard time telling you how I'm feeling. He said, because she is suffering so much. And I can't believe you can still find joy for her. And he said, I can't believe you've made it this far. I was like, really? I mean, he was like, really, he couldn't talk. He was like, and I was like, so you think she's going to die? And he's like, yeah, I don't know how she's still alive.
Seriously.
I think we're keeping her alive. And I was like, the hospice doctor, it was so like baffling to me, but it was confirming that I wasn't crazy, because he was a total outside person who'd never met her, and just looking at her, and I guess just the way she was struggling to walk or to breathe, and how I was and I was like, oh, okay. So like, I need to let her go. But at first they thought she would live longer because they were only going to have the nurse come once a week. But it was like, when she couldn't, that last year, she was going to choke when I couldn't get her, like she couldn't walk at all. And I remember once she got out of the bed and she was like 300 pounds and I was by myself, and I was like crying. I couldn't get her back in the bed. And then she was trying to eat and she couldn't swallow. And I was like, oh, like, okay, this is it. Like, I can't do this to her. And then I was so mad, but then I wouldn't take away her seizure meds, because I felt like those were like, she'd had those her whole life. And I couldn't just let her have a bunch of seizures. So I really learned that you could give them rectally. And I was like, why the hell didn't someone tell me that when she had the flu years ago? I could have been
seriously. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so this is good. Let's let everybody know this, because when she used to get the flu, we would have to go to the hospital. I gave her you can insert them rectally, and they'll
crush up the pills and
right up the rectum. So
we do the diastat. That's right. So just another version.
You just put the pill. So I couldn't like take those away from her. So I was still giving her her seizure meds, but like from when she had the brain surgery, they said, you can take the oxygen off, because she's going to go and she's not going to suffer if you take that away, but it will just allow it to go a little bit faster. So once I did that, then there was a lot of fluid. So, and I didn't put all this away. So I had, like a hospital suction, and I was constantly suctioning it because I didn't want her to, suffer like that. But as for my family, it was really like, I felt like, even though they'd been so mean to me, I couldn't like not allow them to be there, because they've been so crappy. But I knew they were really suffering. They just don't know how to show it. They don't know how to deal with death. So I just like let them all come over, and my sister hadn't really even told her kids, and I don't know if I put this in, but my youngest nephew, like when we were all praying for her the last 10 hours and, we knew she was going to go, he said, "She's not getting better, Auntie?" I said, no, baby. I were praying. And I said, no, she's not. He said, but she's my favorite cousin. Oh, I'm sorry. But it was like, I don't know. But so even my uncle, who's terrified of death in hospitals, he came in a way like I it's so funny. I set this weird, but I got a jigsaw puzzle because I had to make sure the other kids had something to do. So I set a jigsaw puzzle up on the table. So when people would come in, and they didn't know what to do and they weren't in with Tiara, then they could do the puzzle. And it was so funny because it wasn't funny, but after she passed away, I was there for a day and nobody was working on it. I was like, took the puzzle and I cleaned it up, and my other kids, Mom, how could you get rid of the puzzle? But I just tried to make it, and then I was obsessed with getting that turquoise casket, and you can't just get a turquoise casket anywhere. So like the last 5 days of her life, I started we had no money, even though we paid off the house, but we were still like struggling financially. So I was looking first for grave sites, and the grave site that I wanted for her in Corona del Mar, it was like $9,000 for just the plot.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah, just the plot, nothing. And I was like, so I went online, Jill, and I'm like, I don't even know, just in between on my phone. And this ad pulls up, like where you sell grave sites. And some man was selling 2 sites at the place where I wanted for $2,500.
Wow.
I was like, what? And then I found the ad, and then I called, and he doesn't know. He's not from around here, so he doesn't know how much they are. I send my sister over to look at the site. It's this beautiful spot beneath a tree. And I said, oh, well, I want to buy that. And then Lou and I could be buried right next to her. And so I'm organizing this while she's dying. But he calls the funeral home and finds out that it's actually worth $18,000, not $2,500, because he's got a double lot. But my husband calls, or I call him, I said, my kid's dying and I need a spot for her and I can't. And he was like, okay, I'll meet you there, bring this. So we bartered this deal for Tiara, and I think that was totally a God thing. And then I found that casket online in Texas.
No way.
I've had all my kids and my nieces and nephew, I tried to make it kind of joyful. So I had all of us picking online Tiara's casket and the turquoise, which was the best turquoise. And so, we all picked that one. And so we ordered it, I think the day before she passed away, because I needed to have it shipped here. So I tried to just make it like, this is happening.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of embrace it and make it beautiful for her. And the girls I didn't put the picture, but we took this really beautiful blanket and we put it on her. And then we put this flowered kind of headband tiara on her. And we wrapped rosaries on her. And because she always loved to play and put accessories on. So we dressed her up. And we took all these pictures with her. But I mean, death doesn't have to be ugly and scary. And I kind of felt like it was beautiful because you're going to go. We might as well, be surrounded by people that love you. And
our culture, our society really is afraid of death, and no one wants to talk about it. And it's just the next step in the journey. There you're not leaving the area. You're always going to be, your energy,
our souls are still, that's why you feel people still and sense them. But it's so I think that, and I'd watched all my grandparents die. I've never been afraid of death. So I always I figure it's better to be there and participating. So I think that was kind of a gift for my family, the extended family, that they got to be there, but my mom still goes to I don't know. I guess she still goes to the grave. I don't go to the grave once a year. I have mass said for her on the anniversary of her death every year. I go to church and then I stop by, and but she's not there.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
but
So I guess in the aftermath, I mean, I think that that's really beautiful, that the way that you made it like an acknowledged, memorable, and beautiful passing. So yeah,
and other cultures do that. We just
yes,
don't.
they do. We're just so uptight and, Puritan mindset, and oh my gosh, we're not going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing with TSC. It makes you really think about your life and the meaning of your life and what you're here to do. I guess personally, it seems like, so in the aftermath, I mean, it sounds like everybody had their own ways of grieving, and I know that process is ongoing. And I'm sure it's not all sorrowful. I'm sure there's moments like you're connected with Tiara still, and her presence is felt, and your family. How have you all gone on?
Well, I mean, this is hard to say. I'll start with me, but as much as I miss Tiara and is sad, it was so hard when she was alive that
Reading your book, I just don't know how you lived through that.
I don't know how I lived through it. I seriously do not know how I lived through it.
Well, I wanted to mention, when she was in the hospital and she had to be put in the coma, and I would have wanted, it's like, what is this? This is just beyond the beyond. So
yeah. So to be honest, not that I'm happy she's gone, but like, I don't think we could have made it much longer.
Yeah.
I mean,
waiting for you to break. I kept waiting to read that you'd break down, and you didn't. You just, I mean, I know you did in moments, I'm sure.
No, I did. And when I write about that psychic saying that I was a wounded bird on the ground with ants crawling all over me with my wings broken, I mean, that's how I felt. Like I wasn't going to make it much longer. So
I forgot that part. And yeah.
I mean, I was like just being eaten. I wasn't going to make it. So when I cry, it's funny. When all of a sudden I'll just start crying, and it's because she's close. So like when I feel her so close, my soul feels it, and I'll just randomly break into tears. But I haven't really cried a lot about it, Jill. I mean, I really literally slept and and just prayed, and I did sob a lot writing the book. I mean, the book was really hard to write, really hard. Just looking
so worth the read. So worth the read. I mean, as a TSC mom, I think that it's even more meaningful because we know what it is like to be in the hospital. We know what it's like to do the diastat. We know, I'm like going through the parts that I understand with you, and yeah, I felt you portrayed it. I had to sit and cry. I had to sit in the bathroom in the middle of the night and weep because and I felt like that needed to happen. That's the kind of, to honor the story and the work that you put into that, to feel it. And I think that you did a really good job. It's so authentic. So
I feel like it's I call it the people us version. Like it's, my writing is very easy to read. It's kind of like fast page turning. It's very simplistic, but I think our stories are so complicated. We don't really need to add too much, it is a story. So, but that was, so I think I think this has been a lot of grieving this year by writing it. Before that, I think I don't know. Like I said, I think people waited for me to fall apart. I never did. I don't know how to fall apart. It's probably why I was able to do what I did. Mm-hmm. I don't know how sometimes to just sit and be. I get anxious. I'm not too busy, but writing has kind of allowed me to sit. And of course, I then will do it for 10, 12 hours because I'm such a freak. But I mean, I really spent my husband was like, are you going to come out of the room? Like, I wasn't exaggerating. I wrote a book in 9 months. And
I believe it.
Worked 10, 12 hours a day. And it's like, that was I needed to do because it needed to end. Like it needed to be, this is what I said I was going to do. It needed to happen this year. And now whatever is going to happen next, I'm praying it's going to be a bestseller and I make some money because I'm even more in debt. I'm tired of lugging furniture. But, I've had a lot of support. I've sold 200 books in less than a month, which I've been told that's good. It doesn't feel like a lot to me, but other authors have said it's good. So
yeah, I feel like it's got all the right earmarks to be a bestseller. I don't know how you could read it and not be blown away by the magnitude of what you went through and the whole TSC experience.
And I'm hoping. I feel like if it is, it's not going to just benefit me financially. I mean, it's going to benefit our whole community, because having this many people read about TSC, and sadly, my story is, there's other families that live that same story, but they don't have the way to get it out so people know, So anyway, so I'm going to work on it. I'm really going to work on marketing and try and get some people to read about what we all have endured on different levels.
No, I think that's great. And just so people there's a document out there of somebody talking about losing their child in very honest terms. I think that's a real resource, in my opinion. Things don't necessarily always play out the way you're told by the professionals, and the real stories behind the stories, and what are the things that we can do to improve our quality of life and that kind of thing. And I think that is, the more honest and we can be about it and not be so afraid. It's the fear, I think, too, that gets, yeah. So great work.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to follow your blog too. Okay. I'm sure we'll find ways to connect, Tiffani. I love doing this interview and getting to know you a little bit. So tell me where we can find you, where we can find the book, all your promo stuff.
So the book's on Amazon, or you can find it at barnesandnoble.com, indieorg.com. I think it might even be on walmart.com now. Just Google it, Loving Tiara. There's a link on my website, tiffanigoff.com, Tiffani with an I. So.
Tiffani with an I, Goff.com. All right. And I'll put all your links in the podcast. It's been awesome. Okay. Love you. Take care of yourself.
Love you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast, TSC Talks. Please feel free to navigate to our website, www.tsctalks.com. Please try to support us, make a contribution, say a prayer, leave a review. Tell us you love us, you hate us, but thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more.